So in the heart of Seattle's Georgetown neighborhood, you can find a company who's defined by an ever-evolving tale of innovation and creative exploration, and with a mission to craft endlessly variable custom lighting creations using unique materials assembled by hand with locally sourced parts. With me today is Ryan Smith, founder of LightArt. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you for being
Hello.
here. Calling in from Seattle, of course, correct?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So we're here today to specifically talk about your new collection, Coil, which just won a HIP award, so congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
How many prototypes did it take to really get to those ultimate 7 patterns? Because I mean, I can see sort of a little bit behind you, you got, starts and stops that really make up the Coil collection.
Yeah, these are actually some of my favorites, some of these pieces. You think you've got a good idea going, and then that happens. We probably did easily a couple hundred shapes. We went back to our supplier or reformulator. We had to do that 3 different times to get the matte finish right. And so just going through this process to get, kind of the color fixed and the matte finish fixed and the inconsistencies fixed and the little globs of things that get stuck in the resin fixed. It was an amazing amount of time because it's so easy to make something out of a new material. I mean, it works, but when it's already been used and it's got imperfections in it, you have to sort of figure out how to navigate all that. And that's probably the really, I think, interesting part of all this is how do you overcome all of that?
So can you go a little bit more into the waste or the garbage that you're saying that actually makes up the fixture?
Well, yeah, I know it's a bit of I suppose, a strong word when you think about that. But as any manufacturing process, you always have, kind of the offcuts or the edges or the pieces that don't work. And so what we did is we said, okay, let's take this starting point. And actually, I'm going to show you an example of this. I have some right here. We just chipped it up. And so you can see in this, jar, there's just chips of our material, different colors. We then took it to a step further. This has been sorted. So it's the same chips, and they're just sorted where the color is pulled out and the clear is pulled out. So this is our starting point to say, how can we get this material back to a point where we can do something with it? And then at that point, we started to add color and add these other elements to it to create, kind of the look and feel that we're after. This was our first piece that we printed. We took some of these chips and we put them in our machine. We said, okay, let's see what happens. And here this thing came out. It was just a mess. And the colors, were not blending at all. We said, okay, let's like simplify this process. Let's just see if we can get to white and black. But let's do white and black in a really beautiful way. So it's just kind of a matte white and a matte black, and they have this very subtle hue to them. They have almost a kind of pottery-like feel. So that was our goal with color. And I think we can add a lot of colors down the road. But the simple point is just if we can achieve those 2 sides, because we have sort of technically a dirty mix and a kind of a clean mix, we can kind of sort our mixes into those 2 colors.
And then you just touched on it because there is something beautiful, which maybe people at home on their computers can't necessarily capture, but there is this matte, very pottery-like finish that you were able to capture. I mean, was that a huge challenge to be able to really create?
Well, it was, and I can, let's see, I hope these displays are interesting. So here's sort of the example of the 2 colors in its final form before we turned it into our shapes. But what's interesting is before we started to play with kind of that finish, here's a better printed example. It's quite often what you'd expect. It's a bit shiny and maybe not that interesting. And to me, this felt a little bit, I don't know, not as good. It didn't have that kind of subtle quality. And so, it was sort of easy to get a shape in this sort of shiny thing, but it was much harder to get something that had this kind of higher quality. And really, this is maybe going to show up a little bit better, I think. This is the kind of matte finish. And, the more matte finish it goes, I think it looks a little bit less like resin. And it does evoke another, kind of quality. So the idea that it looks like pottery and it has this sort of softness to it. It almost looks fragile. A lot of people ask, is that breakable? And I say, no, you can hit it on the table, you can drop it. And so that, I love the idea that products have this kind of second or third meaning, or you think it might be something that it isn't.
Well, it's great because it's also, it doesn't just feel like another piece that was produced and everyone's like, oh, I know that was like 3D printed or additive, manufacturing process. Like it actually feels different, which is great. And then ultimately you ended up on lucky number 7 actual shapes, correct?
We started with this idea that, okay, the shapes are maybe reminiscent of vessels. And so we had all these kind of fun ideas. And then we said, no, let's just boil them down to just shapes that we kind of like, that sort of feel right. And so it was really then telling the story of the material, and the shapes just happen to be kind of these beautiful, secondary, kind of reasons for these pieces to be. But the vessel and the pottery reference, I think, started to come in, very strong for how these play out.
Well, also I was going to say it's a little bit of a departure maybe from some of the other products that you create, because it also, besides the shape and obviously this very pottery-like finish, it really does capture this residential aesthetic that you may not always see with LightArt.
Well, that was something true. I mean, we're doing a lot of these flat sheets as our kind of starting point. And so a lot of our bigger projects tend to have bigger shapes because we're sort of manipulating these kind of large sheets. And what was fun about this project was we had this machine that can actually create these kind of very elegant, circular shapes. And I thought, oh, this is the first time we can actually make kind of round things. And so we started to really think about that. And at the same time, yeah, it's a scale that is very residential. And I think a lot of commercial projects are going much more residential, as we know, the resimercial feel. But also, gosh, even over the last few months here, I mean, everyone's thinking about their kind of home space now and their home office or whatever it might be. And, what's that feel that you want? And having something kind of small and beautiful is always a wonderful way to add to a space.
Ryan, I mean, we all definitely look forward to seeing what does lay ahead for LightArt. And I want to say thank you so much for really your insight into the brand, into the Coil Collection, and sort of your design process. And to our audience out there, please make sure to check out the LightArt website to learn more about Coil and what's to come for the brand. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene.